So you've heard about this thing called the PYP and you're thinking to yourself, how is it different to what I have grown up with? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? What does it look like in the classroom? And what are the things that go into planning my child's learning experiences? Well, if those questions are in your mind, this video is here to help to attempt to answer those questions. Let's get started. Firstly, I'd just like to give my disclaimer in that these slides that I've created some elements are taken from this presentation created by Miss Cindy Blackburn over here of Toddle. There's a lot of really great resources over there for teachers to help us improve our practices, and it's been a great resource for me. So some of the elements you might see in this slide, it was taken as inspiration, and so I hope that this helps you as well. So thank you to Toddle, thank you to the IB for all these resources. Okay, so the first concept that you need to understand is this idea of transdisciplinary learning. It's something that not many people have heard about unless you've been in this world of the IB and the PYP. But essentially you have different types of learning. You have disciplinary, which is what most people I think are used to, where you study math, you study history, you study geography separately from other things. Then you have this idea of interdisciplinary, where you might get two subjects dipping into each other and relating to each other in different parts. And now in the PYP, our philosophy is around transdisciplinary learning, where we take multiple different subjects and we look at where they interconnect. And that is usually in real world problems, where something is happening in the real world and we look at how literacy can help us to solve this problem, how math can help us to solve this problem, how history can inform us about how this problem came about. All these things come together to help us to understand what is this thing that we are looking at. And it helps children to build their worldview and understand that things aren't separate, things are connected all the time. So this sounds fairly broad, right? And that's true. It's really difficult for new teachers coming in to understand how this all works, especially if you're coming from a more traditional background. Same with parents. If you're coming into a PYP school, it's really hard for you to understand, so don't feel bad. I'm here to help. Teachers, we need help too. And one of the things that the IB has given us to help us figure out how to do this transdisciplinary learning is the transdisciplinary themes. And hopefully that's the last time I say that word. TD themes is the way that we shorthand it so that we can refer to it a little bit easier. And these TD themes are meant to help us to structure our learning and to make sure that we are hitting many different aspects of life for these students. And they are, the first transdisciplinary theme or TD theme is who we are, where we talk about our identity, health, wellness, relationships, all the things that are connected to us and our friends and our families. We have how we organize ourselves. What are the systems that are involved in human society and in nature? How we express ourselves. What are the things that we do to make sure that we connect with other people, and how we can take our learning and express it and give that message to other people. Sharing the planet is a really important part of living on this earth and learning about all the different things that's out there, because we need to make sure that there is enough for everybody right now and in the future as well. How the world works helps us to look through all the foundational aspects of the things that we see around us, and then where we are in place and time helps us to think about our place right now and all those things that have come before, to make sure that we have this wonderful school to go to, and we have this wonderful home, all the things that have happened and contributed to that, hopefully building a little bit of appreciation for what we have as well. And so our units of inquiry are structured around these 6 ideas that theoretically encompass all of human knowledge into these 6 ideas. Okay, so the students repeat these 6 transdisciplinary themes every year from early years, well, grade 1, the 6 of them, they do 4 in early years, up until the end of the PYP, whether that's grade 5 or grade 6, depending on the school. But they do not complete the exact same learning outcomes, because obviously the learning outcomes are different depending on the grade that the student is in. There is, however, continuation and there's connection as the students move through the grades. So for example, in early years, a student might be looking at different means of expression, how they can express themselves. They're playing with paints, they're playing with drawing, they're using writing, starting to write. They're learning how to talk as well, using words, listening. All of these things help them to express themselves. In grade 1, they're looking at language. Okay, what is the role of language in expressing yourself? Grade 2, they might focus on the arts. Grade 3, creativity and action. How creativity can help you to take action when there's a problem. Grade 4, we're getting a little bit more into our values and beliefs and culture. And then grade 5, technology, how technology helps us express ourselves. And maybe in grade 6, you'd look at aesthetics and what makes something look good. And you can see, even though we're doing how we express ourselves every single year for 7 years, we are slowly growing our knowledge throughout our time in the PYP. I thought that the best way for you to see what transdisciplinary learning might look like in the classroom is to go through planning for a unit of inquiry step by step with me. I've simplified a few things, but I'm going to try to show you the key building blocks that we look for when we are planning for a unit of inquiry. So the first step you would see here is you would look at the transdisciplinary theme descriptor, and you would try and create a central idea that is going to be the main driver for your inquiry, your questioning, throughout the 5 to 7 weeks that a unit of inquiry might run through. So here is the descriptor for how we organize ourselves, and you can see that we've underlined some sections there. The first one being the interconnectedness of human-made systems and communities, societal decision-making, as well as the impact on humankind and the environment. And these three things, they come together to create our central idea, which guides our inquiry. And the central idea that we've come up with here is, in this How We Organize Ourselves unit, we will be inquiring into how governments and societies affect each other. This sentence encompasses those three things from the descriptor, and it will help us to ask some more questions about this topic. Now we have our central idea, which is an inquiry into how governments and societies affect each other. Next, we need to decide which disciplines are we going to use to explore this question. You can try to incorporate as many disciplines as you can, but some teachers like to focus a little bit on a couple and make sure that that emphasis is very, very clear for the students. So we're going to focus on these three for today. We're going to be using social studies specifically, so that really connects to our theme of governments. We're going to be looking at math, and we're going to be using the arts as well to add a little bit of creative flair. Okay, so for math, we might be able to bring in governments by looking at the budgeting of a nation. This is a fairly complex document that we'll have to use our literacy skills, which we aren't emphasizing but still using, to understand what is going on in this document, and we'll extract the key information and the key numbers and understand it to the best of our ability. And then we'll use that to answer some questions about what did the government spend money on this year, why did they think that this was important, and maybe what else should they have spent money on. And we can give our suggestions and our reasonings and debate, maybe even build our own mini governments and vote on what we should be doing. So there's a lot of opportunity to incorporate math using big numbers, using budgeting into this unit of inquiry. Social studies is to do with people and cultures and systems and how they are integrated and how they affect each other. And so for this unit of inquiry, we might take a look at the structure of the Japanese government. We might see, how do people get involved in the system, and what is the hierarchy of decision-making power that is within that system. We might ask ourselves, who are the people that make these decisions, and how did they get into power? What is the process of electing people that make decisions on the behalf of the people? And then what are the pros and cons of this system? Does it work well? How can we make sure that it works better in the future? The students will definitely be learning a lot about the specifics of how the country works, and they'll be using their literacy skills to help them understand and then also express their understanding here. let's get art involved now. We need some creative flair in this unit of inquiry that's so serious. So one really fun way of getting the kids excited and motivated about governments and politics is looking at protest art and seeing how people have used visualizations and images to affect ideas and movements in the past. Okay, what are the aspects of the image that grabs people's attention? What parts of it changes people's minds or gets them thinking about a problem that's really, really important in society? This really helps students to understand how do we influence people's thinking and how does their thinking get influenced by images as well. So this is really fun. It's also a really great way for teachers to understand the students' learning. If they can represent what they've learned in the beginning of the unit in an artistic way, in a very simple way, then it shows the teachers that the students' understanding is there. Step number 3, we need some lines of inquiry. So if the central idea was the title of our unit, the lines of inquiry are the chapters, okay? And it's split up into 3 main sections because of timing and because it helps the students to go into a little bit more detail. It also gives them choices of where they want to specialize as well. And so the teachers would sit down together and they would look at the unit that we have and look at the resources that are out there and come up with 3 main lines of inquiry, sometimes more, that will really guide the learning throughout the weeks to come. Okay, so in our unit of inquiry here that we are going through, we will look at an inquiry into why we have governments in the first place. There must have been a time in the past where there were no governments, so what happened with those people? Why did we decide to create governments? Line of inquiry number 2 is an inquiry into what the responsibilities of governments and citizens are. Okay, how can citizens get involved? What is the government's responsibility towards us, and what do citizens do if the government does not deliver? And then vice versa. What is the citizens' responsibility to the government, and what does the government do if the citizens don't follow those rules or the responsibilities? And then line of inquiry number 3 is an inquiry into how citizens can participate in the running of governments. How do you get involved? How do you become a politician? How can you not be a politician but still be involved in politics? And how can you develop a view of politics that doesn't potentially become toxic in the future as well? I think that's a very valuable thing to learn too. Okay. All right. We've come to step number 4, and this is what I think is the secret sauce in the PYP. These are the approaches to learning, or the ATL skills. It's a lot of them, but these are the skills that are really transferable to any topic that students ever come across. These are the skills that students are repeating each and every day throughout their learning. And sometimes when students are going through the years, they will focus on specific approaches to learning, and they'll be measuring their growth as they go through their learning. Teachers, when they're planning their units, will have a look and see, okay, which ATL skills will we emphasize to the students during this unit of inquiry? We'll see the context that we're working with, and we'll pick some ATL skills that we will explicitly teach and emphasize to the students and help them to know how to use these skills while we are going through our unit of inquiry. Now, it is expected that students are going to be using these ATL skills regardless of whether we emphasize them or not. However, we think it's really important to explicitly emphasize these and teach students how to do this and how to get better. These ATL skills come up very, very often in feedback sessions with the students, but it's really important in the planning of a unit of inquiry to emphasize it so that we make sure that it is there in the student's brain. And so for our unit of inquiry, we're going to be emphasizing forming decisions, because that is what our governments are meant to do for us. Consuming and processing, because there's quite a lot of detailed information that we need to learn. And then reliability of sources. How do we know that what we're reading is correct? Because there's many different opinions on governments and different governments around the world. So we just have to be a little bit careful and safe with our sources. So that's ATL skills, approaches to learning, the real secret sauce to the PYP, in my opinion. And lastly, we have the key concepts. This is a part of the secret sauce as well, because it really helps students make connections to many different pieces of content. Okay, so a lot of the time students might be studying or becoming experts in different things or different pieces of content to their peers. And it's really important for those students to then make connections with their peers through use of these key concepts. Okay, so for our unit that we're planning here, we might focus on function. How does it work? How does the government system work? How does somebody become prime minister or president? Okay, what is our responsibility in that process and throughout the general running of a country? And then causation. Why is it like this? Why was this design created? Okay, so we're trying to connect these three separate ideas with these universal concepts. You can probably make an argument that almost any topic or piece of content that you learn about is connected to multiple, probably, of these key concepts. And there we go. Now we have the building blocks that we need for our unit of inquiry. Obviously, this is not the end. A teacher, while they are planning this unit, their next steps would be asking, what learning outcomes will we assess as we move through? What option for assessment will we offer? What are success criteria? What learning experiences might we have? And opportunities for differentiation as well. And so it's a real rabbit hole that we go down, and I might come back to this in a future video talking about assessment and differentiation as well. But for now, this is where I'm going to leave it. I think it's really important to understand these building blocks for you so that you can participate in the learning with your students. So with that said, you deserve some congratulations. You now have a greater understanding of the building blocks that make up your child's learning. But with great power comes great responsibility. So to earn your parent points, I challenge you to look back at the resources that your school and teachers have sent you and make a point to learn what are these key elements of your child's units of inquiry. If you cannot find them, please ask your child or their teacher for this information, because it will help you with point number 2 here, and that is to make a point to casually help your child to make connections to these key elements at a dinner table conversation. There's nothing better than just a casual conversation about these things that doesn't have a lot of pressure on the child, but they have a chance to showcase to you the stuff that they've been learning. Make them feel like they are teaching you and they feel proud that they have some knowledge that they can share out into the world. And with your knowledge of these key elements, you can ask very specific and very tailored questions to draw out their enthusiasm and their motivation.